Section 39 of A Visit to the Holy Land. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 20 of A Visit to the Holy Land, Egypt and Italy, Part 1, by Ida L. Pfeiffer. November 7th. I traveled by the mail carriage. By 7 in the morning we were at Caserta, and an hour later at Capua, a pretty, bustling town on the banks of a river. Our road was most picturesque. We drove among vineyards and gardens through the midst of a lovely plain. On the right were mountains, increasing in number as we proceeded, and imparting a rich variety to the landscape. At noon we halted before a lovely inn. From this point the country increases in beauty at every step. The heights are strikingly fertile, and in the valley an excellent road winds amid pleasant gardens. The mountains frequently seem to approach as though about to form an impenetrable pass, while ruins crown the summits of the rocks, and give a romantic appearance to the whole. At about 3 o'clock we reached the little town of Geromania, lying in the midst of vegetable gardens. Above this town the handsome convent of Monte Cassino stands on a rock, and in its neighborhood we notice the ruins of an amphitheater. Today the weather was not in the least Italian, being, on the contrary, gloomy and rough, as we generally find it in Austria at the same time of the year. Yesterday it was so cold at Naples that Mount Vesuvius was covered with snow during several hours. The dress of the peasants in these regions is of a more national character than I had yet found it. The women wear short and scanty petticoats of blue or red cloth, tight-fitting bodices, and gaily striped aprons. Their head-dress consists of a white handkerchief, with a second above it folded in a square form. The men look like robbers, with their long, dark blue or brown cloaks, in which they wrap themselves so closely that it is difficult to get a glimpse of their faces, and their steeple-crowned black hats. They quite resemble the pictures of the bandits in the Abruzzi. They glide about in so spectral a manner, and eye travellers with such a sinister look, that I almost became uncomfortable. From Geromania we still had a few miles to travel until we entered the Roman territory, near Ceprano. In Naples, and in fact throughout the whole of Italy, the passports are continually called for, a great annoyance to the traveller. In the course of today my passport was visé 5 times, making once in every little town through which we had passed. It was our fortune at Ceprano to lodge with a very cheating host. In the evening, when I inquired the price of a bedroom and breakfast, they told me a bed would cost 2 paus, and breakfast half a paul, but when I came to pay, the host asked 3 paus for my bedroom, and another for a cup of the worst coffee I have ever drunk, and the whole company was subjected to the same extortion. We expostulated and complained, but were at length compelled to comply with the demand. November 8th. The landscape remains the same, but the appearance of the towns and villages is not nearly so neat and pretty as in the Neapolitan domain. The costume of the peasants is like that worn by the people whom we met yesterday, excepting that the women have a stiff stomacher, fastened with a red lace, instead of the spencer. The dress of the men consists of short knee breeches, brown stockings, heavy shoes, and a jacket of some dark color. Some wear, in addition to this, a red waistcoat, and a green sash round the waist. All wear the conical hat. In cold weather the dark bandit's cloak is also seen. As we approach Rome the country becomes more and more barren, the mountains recede, and the extended plains have a desert, uncultivated look. Towns and villages become so thinly scattered that it seems as though the whole region were depopulated. The road is rather narrow, and, as the country is in many places exceedingly marshy, a great portion of it has been paved. For many miles before we enter Rome we do not pass a single town or village. At length, some 3 hours before we reach the city, the dome of St. Peter's is seen looming in the distance. One church after another appears, and at length the whole city lies spread before us. Many ruins of aqueducts and buildings of every kind showed at every step what treasures of the past here awaited us. I was particularly pleased with the old town gate Lateran, by which we entered. It was already quite dark when we reached the Dogana. I at once betook myself to my room, and retired to rest. I remained a fortnight at Rome, and walked about the streets from morning till night. I visited St. Peter's almost every day, and went to the Vatican several times. All the squares in Rome, and there are a great many, are decorated with fountains, and still more frequently with obelisks. The finest is the Piazza del Popolo. To the right rises the terrace hill Piscino, rich in pillars, statues, fountains, and other ornaments, a favorite walk of the citizens. On this hill, which is arranged after the manner of a beautiful garden, we have a splendid view. The city of Rome here appears to much greater advantage than when we approach it from the direction of Naples. We can see the whole town at one glance, with the yellow Tiber flowing through the midst, and a vast plain all around. The background is closed by beautiful mountain ranges, with villas, little towns, and cottages on the declivities. But I missed one feature, to which I had become so accustomed that the most beautiful view appeared incomplete without it: the sea. To make up for this drawback, we here encounter wherever we walk such a number of ruins, that we soon become forgetful of all around us, and live only in the past. The Piazza del Popolo forms the termination of the three principal streets in Rome. On the largest and finest of these, the Corso, many palaces are to be seen. The splendid post office, of white marble, rises on the Colonna Square. 2 clocks are erected on this building, one with our dial, one with the Italian. At night both are illuminated, a very useful as well as an ornamental arrangement. The ancient column of Antoninus also stands in this square. The façade of the Dogana boasts some pillars from the temple of Antoninus Pius. The objects I have just enumerated struck me particularly as I wended my way to St. Peter's. I cannot describe how deeply I was impressed by the sight of this colossal structure. I need only state the fact that on the first day I entered the cathedral at 9 in the morning, and did not emerge from its gates until 3 in the afternoon. I sat down before the pictures in mosaic, underneath the huge dome and the canopy, then I stood before the statues and monuments, and could only gaze in wonder at everything. The expense of building and decorating this church is said to have amounted to $45,852,000. It occupies the site of Nero's circus. 2 arcades, with 4 rows of pillars and 96 statues, surround the square leading to the church. The façade of St. Peter's is decorated with Corinthian pillars, and on its parapet stand statues 52 feet in height. The entrance is so crowded with statues, carved work, and gilding, that several hours may be spent in examining its wonders. The traveller's attention is particularly attracted by the gigantic gates of bronze. I cannot adequately describe the splendor of the interior, nor have I seen anything with which I could compare it. The most beautiful mosaics, monuments, statues, carvings in bronze, gilded ornaments, in short, everything that art can produce, are here to be found in the highest perfection. Oil paintings alone are excluded. Everything here is in mosaic, even the cupola displays mosaic work instead of the usual fresco paintings. Immense statues of white marble occupy the niches. Beneath the cupola, the finest portion of the building, stands the great altar, at which none but the Pope may read Mass. Over this altar extends a giant canopy of bronze, with spiral pillars richly decorated with arabesques. The weight of metal used in its construction was 186,392 pounds, and the cost of the gold for gilding was $40,000. The entire canopy is worth above $150,000. The cupola was executed by Michelangelo. It rests on 4 massive pillars, each of them furnished with a balcony. In the interior of these pillars, chapels are constructed, where the chief relics are kept, and only displayed to the people from the balcony at particular times. I was in the church at the time when the handkerchief which wiped the drops of agony from our Lord's brow, and a piece of the true cross, were shown. The pulpit stands in a very elevated position, and was executed in bronze by Bernini. 219,161 pounds of metal and $172,000 were spent upon its construction.